Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday. Welcome to episode 220 of the On Air Advocate. Where at the On Air Advocate, we look to provide education, support, and empowerment for all of those with different abilities, mental and medical illnesses, and their caregivers. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I am the host and producer of the On Air Advocate. And I am super excited if you are here this afternoon joining us, or whether you are catching this on the replay. Now, as always, if you think any of the content that we are talking about today could be relevant for anyone in your network or your circle, please hit the share button, like button, forwarding button on whatever social media platform you are watching this on. Well, as you guys know, if you've been following us, the month of August is always our resource month. And I am so excited today to have a new guest here with us. Her name is Erin Galyean. She is a professional author, a speaker, and a trainer. Welcome, Erin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and I'm excited for you to share with everyone kind of your journey and what brought you here to the On Air Advocate. You know, what had all the circumstances and things around, and a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so let me dive into it. So, I grew up outside of Philadelphia. So, anyone who's a basketball fan is probably familiar with Villanova University. I grew up in a little town called Newtown Square that's not far from there. And I was the youngest of three children. I was really blessed with growing up in a amazing household with two loving parents and a brother and sister who were very kind to me. I know sometimes there's some sibling rivalry, but in my family we got along really well. So we weren't perfect, but certainly we were loving. So over time, when I was 20 years old, my father was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And 9 months later, he ended up passing away. So he was only 53 years old. It was pretty much a shock to our family because it happened so quickly. I know for some families it happens even faster than that, but really caught us off guard. And he was just the life of the household. You know, very vibrant, fun, brought a lot of spirit to life, and so that really affected our family deeply. And as time moved on, we were able to deal with it. You know, it's hard, it was sad, but we managed and we got through it. And about 21, 22 years later, my sister Meghan, who I was very close to, was also diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Ironically, they weren't connected. It was just purely coincidental as far as we know. You know, maybe when as time progresses and medicine progresses, maybe we'll find out something different. But as of what we know today, it had no connection. And what happened was my sister had the cancer probably for a year before knowing it. The cancer caused an autoimmune disease, which is what actually she noticed first because she was having some sores in her mouth. Then the autoimmune disease caused a lung disease. So she got the triple whammy. The cancer was actually a very curable form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Okay.
So it wasn't the bad news because she had to go through chemo, which of course that's not a fun ride. For anyone that's been through it knows that. But she had 5 months of that, and then she did actually beat the cancer. The bad news was the lung disease. The lung disease is called bronchiolitis obliterans. No one needs to know that term. It's a long one, but it's a severe lung disease. And really, once it took hold of her body, there was really no fighting back. So she fought for 13 months and passed away in October of 2018. And that's really what led me to write this book. So as a professional, you mentioned this, I'm a corporate sales trainer. So I train pharmaceutical reps how to sell to physicians. I have been a pharmaceutical sales rep for 10 years at the very start of my career. So I'm used to speaking to physicians, and I teach others how to do the same and handle objections and introduce themselves and get comfortable in that environment. So what I realized when my sister was sick was that there were things that my career, my background taught me and helped me to be a better advocate for my sister.
Yes,
And go ahead.
1 second, just because I want to just ask you before we get too far, because I mean, then I want to dive into all the advocacy stuff. But so interesting that both your father and your sister had this, and I'm sure that if someone catches this episode and someone in their family had it, they're going to, you know what I'm saying? They have further questions. Like a lot of times, especially when you have more than one person in a family, was there other relatives that had the non-Hodgkin's, like aunts, great aunts, grandparents, anything like that? Is it a hereditary? I mean, like a genetic thing?
So they
Hereditary?
said this was not genetic. My sister and my father had two different forms of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So I didn't know that there were multiple forms of it, and they had two different kinds. I don't really remember the types that they had at this point, but so they said they were not connected, which seems just like a bad deal, right? That my family got handed. I do have a cousin that had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma as well.
And what did they say to that? So, I mean, there's been 3 members of your family then that have had it?
Mhm. Yeah, and I have a big family. So, but my immediate family is small. But they're telling us there's no connection. I don't know. That's all I know from a medical standpoint. But it does seem odd, doesn't it, that out of 5 people in my immediate family, 2 of them had the same type of cancer.
Right. And then a more of a distant cousin?
Right. First
Oh, a
cousin.
first cousin, so a closer cousin. And did they provide any type of testing links? You know what I'm saying? I know you said it's not genetic, but do they, because sometimes underlying genetic things that are there can then spur on other things. Which
Yeah.
can
I
be
don't recall. They might have tested my sister genetically. I know we talked about that, but
Mhm.
my father passed away in 1997. So that medicine was different then, so but I was actually going to volunteer to get tested to see, and I've been told there is no connection there, so it wouldn't tell me anything if I got tested for it. It's kind of interesting.
That is interesting. All right,
Hmm.
we're gonna get back on track, but we should do another show all on that.
I know.
And just
I get a doctor on here to answer those questions.
Yes, I mean, for our family, which I think that we had chatted about, I have an adult son with significant chronic medical illness, but also
Mhm.
different disabilities as well. And we ended up going through the whole path of genetic testing
Yes.
as parents. So interesting. The
Fascinating.
Yeah, the thing
Fascinating.
that you find and you're like, oh, that's like underlying, and you're trying to then like figure out whose gene that came from and whatnot. But
Right.
yeah, we can definitely dive into that another time because I think that there's many people that have in their families, where 2 people have the same condition and they're like, where does this come from? So,
Right. Right. And because there were two different forms, that's why they don't think they were connected. Two
okay.
different types of non-Hodgkin's. Yes.
Okay. And so you going through not only being in the field that you're in, but going through your father passing, and I'm
Mhm.
assuming you doing some of the talking and advocating for that, and then your sister as well being so close, I'm sure that you were in there making sure that nobody was going to do anything that didn't
That's
get
right.
passed through.
That's right. For the interesting thing is when my father passed away, I mentioned I was 20. So I was in college, and I really wouldn't have said that I was an advocate for him,
Mhm.
but that was a lesson for me. When someone passes away, most of us have something we wish we had said or wish we had done. And for me, I wish I had been more involved. Looking back, I was in school, I was several states away. There wasn't much I could have done. But now that I did know about the healthcare industry and I had all this knowledge, I wasn't going to let that happen again.
Yes. And so your sister, who you're super close with, she passed
Mhm.
away in 2018. And
Mhm.
then happens, obviously, I know you became an author.
Yeah.
What came first? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What?
So it actually kind of came when she was sick. I thought about training people in hospitals because I am a corporate trainer, and I thought this is a way that I could help people. And I'd actually mentioned to some of my sister's physicians at the hospital and said, I remember when I was pregnant, I went to the yoga class downstairs or a birthing class or
Yeah.
CPR. I could provide that same service. I live in Dallas. My sister lived in Charleston, South Carolina.
Mhm.
So I could provide that same service, but speak about how to advocate for your loved one who's upstairs while
Right.
maybe they're sleeping. And then as that thought went on, then I realized I could touch a lot more people if I wrote a book rather than just maybe 10 people that
Yeah.
happen to be at the hospital that want to sign up for my class here in Dallas. So that's something I still want to do someday. But the book, I feel like I can help a lot more people. And I have to tell you, I've had physicians read my book, I've had different types of healthcare providers, and every one of them says the same thing. everyone needs this book. Every doctor's office needs this book. People who are in this position, a caregiver or even a family member, need
Mhm.
this book. And because it's actionable, I try to keep it very simple, not to complicate things, and that's how I train people.
And I think that for so many, when that caregiver journey comes to them, you know what I'm saying? It's a lot of times thrust upon them.
Yes.
Not something you prepared for and that
No.
you did all this research. And so for so many of us that, have kids that are born with, chronic illness or different
Mhm.
abilities, it's like this hurricane for the first 7
Mhm.
years or so till you figure out the landscape. For those that are
Mhm.
caring for their elderly loved ones, aging parents, or those that get terminally ill, it's like just instantly thrust upon them. But they're also, I feel like they mourn the process. I mean, they
Mhm.
mourn the person that used to be, you know?
Yeah.
Children are born a lot of times with different abilities. We're just meeting them, right?
Right.
Find that
Right.
for aging loved ones, there is so much because not only are you trying to deal with all that medical stuff and figure it all out, but you're like, oh my gosh, what's going on with mom? What's going on with dad? This isn't the sister I've known my whole life, you know?
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely. And actually that's one of the things I wanted to speak about was, especially now with COVID, the importance of advocating for the patient's mental health. A lot of times as an advocate, and it could be no matter who it is, you just mentioned being a parent, it could be your parents, it could be a friend or a sibling or your spouse. Any of those people that you're advocating for, you need to also be aware if they're struggling mentally. I just spoke to a family friend about that this week, and his mom has been struggling because of COVID. She can't see her children and she had a stroke. So you can have these days, majority of physicians are doing telehealth. So they are doing what we're doing right now, speaking over video, and you need to advocate and push your loved one who you see struggling, because a lot of times when you're depressed or you're just really having a hard time and you have this serious illness, you can't fight for yourself in that way. You don't speak up and say, I need help. You don't maybe even know that you need help. So as an advocate, pay attention to those signs and don't be afraid to approach the patient about that subject, and then look at their insurance if they have it. What coverage do they have for therapy? A lot of insurances will cover maybe 1 or 2 sessions a month. What help can you get them so
right,
they can get that mental aspect taken care of, which is almost just as important as the physical,
yeah.
because how can you fight and you start to give up if you don't have that fight mode?
Right, right. And I know that we had Minority Mental Health Awareness Month, and then the month before
Mm.
that we had just regular, mental health with COVID, and all of that. And so there are some hotlines with like within our community that are around the United States that you can just call. They can direct to you to people in your cities and whatnot. I know in New York, they just put on a program with like a hope program that anybody can call and get services. So I know that
Good.
there's a lot of being done on it.
That's what people need. It's tough. It's tough for everyone, but imagine if you're seriously ill right now. How scary and difficult to be isolated and just fearful to go out into the world, which is already hard enough for you if you're seriously ill.
Yes, definitely. We do tons of telehealth here, and it has worked very, very well. And I don't, for a lot of different physicians and things like that, I don't know that it will go back to normal. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think it will. I think, in a good way, being
Mhm.
on the pharmaceutical side, I think that actually will give patients who can't go to the doctors as easily as a healthy patient, it'll give them more opportunity to have that communication with providers. So in a way that may be something beneficial that comes out of this whole COVID disaster.
Yes, and I know that you were saying, so one of your missions with your books is obviously to help, families lead them to be powerful advocates.
Hmm.
Know the right things to say and whatnot. I know you had like three top tips that you really think are super important to take with you. Would obviously the mental health awareness be a big part of that?
Yeah. So the number one that I would say is to build a support team. And it's the very first tip I give in the book. So a lot of times, and again, I've had these healthcare providers say, yes, people need a support team and they don't think about that. So a
Right,
lot of times the caregiver takes it on themselves. They
right,
take it all on. And that could be a parent, a spouse, an adult child, right? And
right.
even if they have siblings, let's say it's an adult child that's taking care of their aging parents, even if they have siblings, sometimes someone's personality ends up being the more go-getter, the one that's going to do
Right.
it. And then the other ones take the back seat, and there's resentment. I see it a lot in the social media groups that I'm a part of. And really, I do think people want to help. And I know every family dynamic's different, so I can't say that across the board for every family. I do think sometimes people don't know what to do.
Right.
So in the book, I say you have to get a support team, and that doesn't have to just be family. It could be friends, it could be neighbors, it could be clergymen, anyone who's part of that community that you're a part of. Enlist their help, and it can be in very minimal ways. It doesn't have to be in by taking care of their medication. It can be in small ways of like organizing donations, organizing a meal train in your neighborhood. There's many ways that people can help. Walking the dog, small things that can take it off your list because you're the main caregiver, and
Right.
they can advocate. I advocated from half a country away, and so I really believe that you don't have to be down the street or doing everything firsthand in order to help.
Yes. To get involved. I would say that too. Building your support team, number one.
That's number one. And there's just, so if you look at the book, there's lots of ways you can do that, and you have to get creative. Number two is, this is really important, be prepared with a list of questions when you're going to have a conversation with a healthcare provider. So I say healthcare provider and not doctor, because sometimes we forget that the nurse is just as important as the physician. The nurses usually do the hourly care, right? They're there with the patient all the time. Don't forget, and we tell pharmaceutical reps this too, don't forget how important their role is and how knowledgeable they are.
Mhm.
They know so much about that patient that if they're hospitalized and if you can get someone on the phone, I know with COVID, it's really challenging to get someone on the phone these days. Try and speak to the head nurse and try and get details, but come with a list of questions if you're going to have that call. If you come and you're not prepared, you're probably going to walk away frustrated and discouraged because you will think of something afterwards, and that may still happen, but
Mhm.
you're going to later on regret that you didn't get this information. So, going back to your support team, this is why it's also important to have a support team. Come up with your list of questions with your support team, whoever you're comfortable with. Every support team can look different. For my sister, it was my immediate family and her husband. So we worked together and we would come up with questions because all of our brains work differently. So
Right.
what I'm going to think of is going to be different than what my mom or my sister's husband thought of. So if we
Right.
bring all of our questions together, and some will overlap, organize them, put them in your phone. That's a great place to have them. So if you go to a doctor's appointment, you have them with you and you're not scrambling around looking for them. Then
Mhm.
you'll get the answers that you really need to help support them and make wise healthcare decisions.
And just add to the list of questions is that it's so helpful because so many times when you're in those appointments, your emotions are so high. So aside from just
Yeah.
forgetting because we forget things, a lot of times we're hearing things that we don't want to hear, and so then our questions get mixed up with what we were going to ask them, within the emotion of what they just told us from a test result or any of that. I also encourage sometimes, families to, if you get news and you weren't prepared for that and now you're all off kilter and you can't formulate what you want to say and articulate it the right way, to say, I need to come see you guys next week again.
Yeah.
you know
Yeah, don't be afraid to speak up for sure. As an advocate,
yeah,
you need to just not be afraid to say what you need to. Sometimes I think with physicians, we get intimidated. They're
yes.
just humans, so
Hmm.
don't be intimidated. And really, I can relate to that. I went through IVF years ago to get pregnant with my son. And I remember going to the doctor, and my husband couldn't make the appointment. And the doctor gave me all this information. And I came home. My husband said, "So, what did the doctor say?" And I said, "I have no idea. I don't remember anything that he said." I think because you get stuck maybe in one thing that they say, and then you're thinking and your mind's racing and you don't hear the rest of it, or you're overwhelmed and you just, so it's so important when someone's seriously ill, it's even worse. They've got so much and they may be heavily medicated. If they have like a brain tumor, that could be affecting the way that they think and behave. So, really, an advocate is so important with asking questions and remembering the information, which leads
Yeah,
me to my last tip, which is record the conversations if you can. So
yes.
this is one of the best things that my family did. Now, I always give it the caveat that if you're going to record conversations with the physician, the nurse, any therapist, anyone like that, make sure that you have their permission first. The
Mhm.
patient's and the healthcare provider's permission. This is not about trapping them, lawsuits, nothing about that. It's about the recording device being your memory. Also, if you have a support team, you can, with the permission of the patient, you can go and share that with your support team. So like I said, with my sister's support team, it was my immediate family I grew up in and her husband. So whoever was the advocate that day, we would record the conversation. When my sister was healthier, she would actually record the conversation herself if she was by herself. And
Right.
then and then we would come back and we would share it, and we would each pick out different things. You have different personalities, you're focused on different things, and that helped us to be stronger advocates as a unit, because we understood her case together versus getting in pieces of information that maybe mom remembered this piece and maybe my brother remembered this piece and they didn't remember the whole thing. Like I just gave that example of my memory being terrible. So that really helps, and you can always go back and re-listen to it as many times as you want, but you have to get their permission to record someone.
Yes, and I think that a lot of times for families, like you were saying, you lived far away at one point in time. If they can't be there, it's a great way to keep all the brothers and sisters or whoever is in that support team connected.
It
Uh,
is.
so they feel like they're, because for you to be like, let's say at the hospital all day or being the caregiver all day, and then to have to translate everything that the doctor said, especially if you're going 3 to 4 days a week, to the doctor, it's very hard because you're like exhausted
Exhausting.
with all the other process answering their questions. Now you have your whole family. So I know lots of families that do that. They kind of either ask a recording or they do it in a group. They do like a group chat.
Yep.
So
And now
every,
you can with these videos for sure.
yeah,
Tammy, you painted that picture perfect, because that's what was happening in my family. They were exhausted. It's the end of the day. They finally got home to make dinner, and then I'm calling from Dallas saying, "So what happened at the hospital today?" They don't want to recap that. That's a lot. They're
yeah,
exhausted. So the other thing that someone just brought up for me, someone is writing a guest blog for my website, and what she brought up was she was used to work in a pulmonologist's office, and
okay.
she said she loved the recording of the conversations because physicians get frustrated when different family members are asking the same questions again and again and again. So
Hmm.
you've got mom and sister and husband and brother coming in, repeating these conversations, and the physician wants to move forward. And you're still staying in the same place because you haven't communicated. And we know not all families are close. So that could happen, or they maybe don't communicate well just in general, and they have great relationships. We all have different dynamics. So it's so beneficial in many ways. I can't advocate for that enough.
Yes, so beneficial. And oh, that top three. Now, your book has a whole lot more than just 3 tips in it, right?
It does. It has 8 badass strategies, and I go really deep into the support team, so there's a lot of content on there that I could never cover off in a hour show.
So I love that. Do you have your book with you by chance? Forgot to
I
have-
do. It's right here.
Oh, awesome! I love it, and I love the name. Hmm.
It's, you know what? I think when you're a caregiver, and I wasn't even the caregiver, my mom was, but when you are fighting for someone's health that you love so much, you don't feel like a badass. You
Hmm.
feel tired and exhausted and sad or angry. You have so many emotions. So really, I want people, and I love that you said this in the beginning of your show, I want to empower people. I want people to feel like I'm not out of control. I can actually do something to make a difference in my loved one's care. And
Right.
that's what it's about. You cannot cure them. I wish I had the answer for that. I don't, or else my sister would still be here. But you can make a difference in their care, and it's by being their voice.
And what you were saying to like the support systems, how everybody has their unique way of helping,
Hmm.
even being the family cheerleader.
Hmm.
Like you're doing awesome. You know what I'm saying? Even just that vote, even though you're like, okay, well, I'm still tired, having people there that are recognizing that you are making great strides, like, oh my gosh, you got all of that done. I mean, because I know that there are many caregivers when the doctor gives them compliments, like, wow, that's all wrapped up. You had that taken care of. They even feel like, wow, okay, I'm doing a good job.
I'm doing something. Yes, I'm doing something to help them. And it's funny you say that, because one of the roles, I named the roles on the support team really just for fun.
Okay.
And I called it Director of Delight. And I have a cousin who, she did a lot more than this, but she is one of those people in your life who you just love to be around. And she's always happy and sweet hearted,
Yeah.
And so she kind of was that person for us. Yeah. And my family too, not just for my sister. When she would come into town, it would lift all of our spirits. And that role is more important than what you think, because everyone's going through a tough time.
Yes, definitely. So, how can people access that book?
Yeah. So a
Oh,
few ways. Number one, the easiest way is probably to go to my website. It's www.badassadvocate.com. The book is there. The link to the book is there, which goes to Amazon. I'm also on barnesandnoble.com. And then also on the website, I have a lot of free resources. And that's why I really recommend going there, because being in the pharmaceutical industry, there's some things that I may be privy to that, for example, websites where I know that physicians go to look up studies and information on diseases. So I've learned that just from being a trainer. So I've listed a bunch of those. I found other organizations that are really helpful for maybe children who have lost a parent, or a parent that's sick or dying. So lots of free resources on there. I also have a blog on there that I write things that didn't make the book. And then also, I have guest bloggers, people that have been patients, caregivers, worked in healthcare offices. So, really, not just my perspective, but hearing from other people who have been through difficult times when it comes to caregiving or being the patient. And then I have a new shop that I haven't even announced yet. So, I guess this is my announcement because I haven't announced it on social media yet. Uh, but it's there and it's going to continue to build. So, when my sister was sick, because we're so close, most of my family members and friends would reach out to me and say, "What can I get your sister?" Or "What can I get your mom?" Because my mom was taking such good care of her. "What can I get your sister's girls?" Because my sister has two young daughters. And after a while, I was running out of ideas to give other people when I also wanted to buy my mom and my sister and my nieces gifts. So I
yeah,
thought if I could have a site where I could recommend some creative, personalized gifts for people
right.
that's in one place, that's one thing I could take off their list and make it easy. So I've got lots of little vendors on there with some cute stuff, and I'm adding more and more stuff all the time. So
That's so awesome. I'm going to go and peruse
yeah,
that.
and there's some fun, encouraging, empowering stuff, like stuff about cancer. I won't say the first word, but F cancer on the socks, and bracelets, and there's a lot of fun stuff, pillows and blankets, and all good ideas for patients. And like I said, more's coming, so that's kind of fun.
Yeah, I think that that's so cool because you know what? I always tell people I'm like one of my favorite thing when I'm doing the hospital hustle because we're at the hospital every week,
Yeah,
is the gift shops. But because
yeah.
of COVID, they're closed. But it's not like
Close. I know.
hospital gift shops online, and they have the best stuff a lot of times. But this is a way. I mean, people aren't going to go to the hospital to buy the present unless they're really at the hospital.
Yeah. And also, some of these patients are homebound. So you
Right.
can have it delivered to them at home, and you can only eat so much lasagna, right? So what else can you get them, especially if this is a long-term illness, or an aging parent? You want to do something different.
I love it. I love it. And they can access it right from their home. So when we log off today, can you just drop below in the comments just your website down there, maybe the shopping link as
Absolutely.
well, so it takes them directly to the page? That would be awesome. So
Yeah.
I'm just so excited you are here today, Erin. And is there any final thoughts that you would like to leave the guests with today about advocating or just empowering themselves? Anything. I know that I'm throwing this at you. I didn't bring it up.
No, it's okay. So, yes, what I would say is when I wrote my book, my sister, COVID, I didn't even know COVID-19 existed. Okay. So, this was an era where you had a lot more access in the hospital.
Mhm.
That being said, a lot of what's in the book can still apply. The one thing that I would give, that I'm actually going to write a blog post or post one soon, is about what to do during COVID. So, try your best to get a hold of people in the hospital, like the hospital case manager. They're
Mhm.
usually in charge of everything that's going on with the patient. Okay, so they'll be very knowledgeable. The head nurse, like I mentioned,
Mhm.
also palliative care, we didn't talk about today, and we could do that on another episode because palliative care is amazing and a lot of people don't know about it. Palliative care is not hospice. It's not just for people that are dying. It's for anyone with a serious illness. They will support the mental health, and they will support the pain management. They do a lot, and they can support the family too. Like if you have children, they can have different activities in the hospital. I know kids aren't going to the hospital right now, but so there's so much. If you can reach a palliative care team member, I advocate for that too. And if you can do Zoom, do that. See the physician, see the nurse, see that hospital case manager. If they don't offer it, ask for it. And you can sign up for Zoom for free and I don't work for them, Zoom for free for 40 minutes. I'm sure there are other free ones as well.
Yeah.
So seeing someone's face is very different than being on the phone. And so practice that and get on if you can, because that's the only way you can really advocate for them.
Yes, and remember, which you repeatedly say also in your book and in your context, is that we are our loved ones' best advocates.
Hmm.
You know,
Absolutely. They don't necessarily have a voice. They don't have the energy, or like I said, they could be medicated. They need you, and you can do it. You can. If I can do it, you can do it. It's just about finding out the right resources and having that voice and asking good questions. And the more you do it, the better you'll get.
yes, yes,
Everyone can be a badass advocate. I promise.
yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing today during our resource series, Erin. I really appreciate you being here. Could you flash that book one more time at us so people know the cover? I think it's the cutest book ever.
Thanks.
Look
It's
at it.
fun.
Look at it. It is fun.
And when I chose this,
Looking at
my
it.
cousins were saying this. My sister had beautiful handwriting, so they said, "This is the one. It looks like your sister's handwriting." The heart. Oops, sorry. It's heart.
Oh, and
Yeah.
I was wondering that heart, it was so pretty. Like, did your sister have something to do with that when I was
I
looking?
wish she did. No, but it does kind of look like something she could do because she used to do calligraphy and she had beautiful handwriting. So I wish she could have written something for it. But
Well, she would want it to look like that. Mhm.
yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much, Erin. I
Thanks,
know you're going to
Tammy.
those below. Thanks for being here, and we'll cover some of those other subjects at another time as well. So, love to have you back on again. So,
Love
with
it.
that, everybody, happy Friday. Have a very safe weekend, and we'll be back next week. If you want to know any more about the On Air Advocate services, head on over to onairadvocate.com. And if you are viewing this from Facebook and you want to join our private community, head up to the top of this Facebook page, hit the blue button, and that will let you into our private group. So with that, everybody have a fabulous weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.